Your father earned that uniform. You're just wearing it. Staff Sergeant Cole Brennan said it loud enough for the entire formation to hear. Standing in the March rain at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, with 30 soldiers watching to see if their new platoon leader would break. First Lieutenant Catherine Morrison stood perfectly still. Water dripped off her patrol cap, ran down the sides of her face, soaked through her combat uniform. At 28, she stood 5'7", with the lean build of a distance runner, sharp features, high cheekbones, ice blue eyes that tracked everything, her father's eyes, the ones she saw in the mirror every morning, the ones that reminded her of a ghost she'd been chasing for 20 years. A thin white scar ran from her right eyebrow into her hairline. You had to know to look for it. Most people didn't. Most people saw the uniform first. The first lieutenant bars on her chest, the crossed rifles of the infantry branch, the Ranger tab on her left shoulder. Her right shoulder bore the 82nd Airborne Combat Patch. Proof she'd deployed. Proof she'd seen the elephant. What Brennan didn't know, what none of them knew unless they'd read the classified files, was that her father, Colonel William Morrison Medal of Honor recipient, had died in Fallujah when she was 9 years old. That she'd spent every day since proving she was more than a name on a memorial plaque at Fort Bragg. What Brennan couldn't see was that the Ranger tab sewn onto her shoulder had been earned through 62 days of hell with no special treatment, no shortcuts, no safety net. That she'd been recycled once in the mountains for a navigation error and had come back to crush it. And what he definitely didn't understand was that the lieutenant he'd just disrespected had led soldiers through a firefight in Afghanistan that should have killed them all, had earned a Bronze Star with Valor she never talked about, and was about to teach him the difference between legacy and competence in the most painful way possible. The rain fell harder. March in Kentucky, cold gray, miserable. The 2nd Brigade Combat Team motor pool smelled like diesel fuel gun oil and the particular tension that came before major deployments. It was 0630 on a Monday morning, and Alpha Company 1st Battalion, 97th Infantry Regiment was staging vehicles for a 2-week rotation at the Joint Readiness Training Center in Louisiana. First Sergeant Victor Sutherland stood 20 feet away, 43 years old, 2 Iraq deployments, 1 Afghanistan, face carved from granite and weathered by 2 decades of sun sand and vigilance. Steel gray eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. He'd been watching Catherine for 2 weeks since she'd taken command, reserving judgment, waiting to see if she was real. Now he was moving toward Brennan with murder in his eyes. Catherine caught his gaze, gave the slightest head shake. No, this was her fight. Sutherland stopped, waited, watched. 400 meters away through sheets of rain, Lieutenant Colonel Diane Halford stood at her office window on the 3rd floor of the battalion headquarters building, binoculars pressed to her face. At 46, she was the first female infantry battalion commander at Fort Campbell, the first woman to lead a combat arms battalion in the entire 10th Mountain Division. She'd climbed every rung of that ladder by never, not once, not ever giving critics ammunition. She lowered the binoculars, turned to her executive officer, a major with Ranger and Special Forces tabs, who looked uncomfortable with what he was witnessing. How long until Morrison breaks? The XO shifted his weight. Ma'am, she's been solid for 2 weeks. Her father was solid too. Halford's voice carried the flat-clipped tone of someone who'd spent 30 years proving herself in rooms full of men who didn't want her there, until he got himself killed, leading from the front like a sergeant instead of commanding like a colonel. Broke protocol, dismounted during contact, left his command post to play hero. She picked up a personnel file from her desk. Morrison Catherine A., officer record brief. Tabs stuck out from multiple pages where she'd highlighted passages, made notes, built a case. Legacy appointments always crack under pressure. Halford continued, I want documentation when she does. Every mistake, every violation of doctrine, every time she puts herself at risk instead of commanding from the rear where officers belong. The XO said nothing. He'd learned over 18 months serving under Halford that silence was often the safest response. Halford set down the binoculars. Her father's recklessness got him killed and almost destroyed the credibility of an entire operation. I won't let the daughter do the same thing to this battalion. We've worked too hard, sacrificed too much to have some academy graduate with the famous name and do everything we've built. She turned back to the window. Through the rain, she could see Catherine standing motionless in formation, Brennan's words still hanging in the air like smoke. Let's see if she learned from her father's mistakes, Halford said quietly, or if she's doomed to repeat them. The rain kept falling. Catherine stood there soaked, silent, calculating. 36 soldiers watching, waiting. This was the moment. The test she'd known was coming since the day she pinned on her lieutenant bars. Since the day she commissioned infantry in 2018 as part of the first wave of women authorized for ground combat roles. She could respond now. Could crush Brennan in front of the formation, use her rank to destroy him, make an example that would echo through the company. But that would earn fear, not respect. And fear was a poor substitute for the loyalty she needed from these men. She could ignore it, pretend she hadn't heard. But weakness now would be blood in the water. They'd tear her apart before they ever reached JRTC. Or she could do what her father would have done, what she'd learned in the mountains of North Georgia during Ranger School, when instructors had tried to break her with words before they broke her with pain. She could earn it. Catherine met Brennan's eyes, held them for 3 seconds, let him see that she wasn't rattled, wasn't broken. Then she turned to First Sergeant Sutherland. First Sergeant, continue with pre-combat inspections. I want all vehicles mission capable by 1400. Squad leaders report to the company conference room at 1500 for JRTC operations order brief. Her voice carried across the motor pool. Steady, professional, no emotion. As if Brennan had said nothing at all, she walked away, back straight, head up, didn't look back. Behind her, Sutherland stepped close to Brennan, close enough that only Brennan and his squad could hear. My office, 10 minutes, come alone. Brennan's face went carefully neutral. Roger, First Sergeant. Catherine had been 9 years old when 2 officers in dress blues knocked on the door of their base housing at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. October 24th, 2004. A Saturday, she'd been homesick from school with a cold, had been watching cartoons in the living room, wrapped in a blanket on the couch. Her mother was in the kitchen making soup. The smell of chicken broth and vegetables filled the small house. The knock came at 11:17 in the morning. Catherine remembered the time because she'd been watching the clock, waiting for her father to call. He always called on Saturdays when he was deployed, always at noon Eastern time, like clockwork. Her mother had answered the door. Catherine heard it open, heard her mother's sharp intake of breath, then nothing. Just the sound of the television and her own heartbeat suddenly loud in her ears. She'd gotten up, walked to the entryway, seen her mother on the floor, 2 officers in dress uniforms standing over her, one of them kneeling trying to help her up. Catherine had known before they said a word. Colonel William Morrison, Iron Will Morrison, to the men who served under him, battalion commander of 2nd Battalion 325th Airborne Infantry Regiment, had been killed by an improvised explosive device outside Fallujah, Iraq. He'd been leading a mounted patrol. Standard mission. Route reconnaissance. The kind of mission battalion commanders didn't usually run personally, but her father had never asked his men to do anything he wouldn't do himself. The patrol had been ambushed. RPG strike on the lead vehicle. 3 wounded, including the vehicle commander. Her father had dismounted under fire, left the relative safety of his armored Humvee, ran 50 meters through machine gun fire from multiple positions to reach the wounded soldiers. He dragged them to cover, called for casualty evacuation, held the position while the medevac birds came in. The IED had detonated when he'd gone back for the last wounded man, a specialist 19 years old, leg torn open by shrapnel, bleeding out in the street. 14 soldiers survived that day because William Morrison had led from the front. He didn't. They'd given him the Medal of Honor posthumously. The citation used words like conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. They'd given Catherine's mother a folded flag, a gold star for the window, and a letter from the president. They'd given Catherine a shadow she'd carry for 20 years. Her mother had remarried when Catherine was 12. Garrett Morrison, no relation, just the coincidence of a common name, was a good man, a defense contractor, logistics specialist, had never served in the military but respected those who did. He'd tried to be a father, tried to fill that enormous, impossible void. But how do you compete with a ghost who died a hero? Catherine grew up driven by something she couldn't name, or wouldn't. Excellence in everything, academics, athletics, leadership positions. Not because she enjoyed it, not because it came naturally, but because she needed to prove something. To the people who remembered her father, to the world, to herself. most of all to the ghost in the photographs on the mantle. The man in dress blues with the same ice blue eyes, the same sharp features, the same intensity that burned through the camera lens even in still images. At 17, against her mother's gentle protests and Garrett's concerned questions, Catherine had accepted appointment to the United States Military Academy at West Point. "You don't have to follow him," her mother had said one night in the kitchen, crying quietly, trying to hide it. "You can be anything, do anything. You're smart enough for any school, any career." "I know, Mom." Catherine had been sitting at the table acceptance letter in front of her, trying to explain something she didn't fully understand herself. "This is what I want." But was it, or was it what she thought he would have wanted? She'd never been sure. Still wasn't. West Point, 2014 to 2018, 4 years on the Hudson River. 4 years of academics, military training, physical conditioning, and the constant grinding pressure of proving herself in an institution that had only been fully coeducational since 1976. Catherine had graduated in the top 15% of her class, excelled in military science and tactics, ran cross-country, commanded a company during her senior year. But every achievement, every award, every recognition came with the same refrain: Morrison like Colonel William Morrison. And then the assumptions would follow. Whispered in study halls, muttered in the mess hall, spoken quietly enough that she couldn't confront them directly, but loud enough that she always heard. Legacy admission. They're going easy on her. Famous father gets special treatment. Well, when she'd commissioned infantry in 2018, part of the first full cohort of women authorized for ground combat roles after the Defense Department had finally opened all military occupational specialties to female soldiers, the whispers had gotten louder. Affirmative action. Social experiment. She'll get soldiers killed. Give it 6 months, she'll wash out. Catherine had been assigned to Fort Bragg, her father's ground, his legacy. Every building, every street, every training area carried his memory. The memorial plaques, the named facilities, the old-timers who'd served with him and would approach her in the commissary, at the gym, and the motor pool, always with the same opening line. "I served with your father." She'd been a platoon leader at 22. 2nd Platoon, Bravo Company, 1st Battalion, 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment. 36 soldiers, most of them older than she was, all of them skeptical, some openly hostile. She'd worked 16-hour days, learned every soldier's name, family situation, problems, trained harder than anyone, led from the front on every ruck march, every field exercise, every training event, never asked them to do anything she wouldn't do first. Some soldiers had respected Pitt and had seen the work, the dedication, the refusal to quit. Others had watched for her to fail, waited for the inevitable moment when the academy graduate with the famous father would crack under pressure. That moment had never come, but the watching never stopped. At 23, Catherine had volunteered for Ranger School. It was 2020. Only the third-year women had been authorized to attend. The Ranger Training Brigade at Fort Benning, Georgia was still adjusting to the change, still figuring out how to evaluate female candidates against the same standards that had broken thousands of male soldiers over the decades. 19 women had started Catherine's class. 3 would graduate. People had asked her why. She was already an infantry officer, already had a platoon, already commanded respect or at least obedience from her soldiers. The Ranger tab wasn't required for her branch, wasn't required for promotion. It was purely voluntary. So why subject herself to 62 days of sleep deprivation, starvation, and carefully calibrated psychological warfare designed to break even the strongest candidates? Because without that tab, she knew every accomplishment would be attributed to her father's name, or to gender politics, or to special treatment. The Ranger tab was different. It was irrefutable. You either met the standard or you didn't. There was no politics in the mountains, no legacy admissions, no famous names, just performance under pressure. And Catherine needed to know, needed to prove to herself more than anyone else that she could meet the standard on her own. Ranger assessment phase at Fort Benning had almost killed her. 5 days of running push-ups, pull-ups, land navigation, water survival, all on minimal food and sleep, designed to identify candidates who couldn't hack it before the real training even started. Catherine had pushed through by compartmentalizing the pain, a skill she'd learned young. Sitting in her bedroom after her father's funeral door locked, refusing to cry, forcing herself to be strong because that's what he would have wanted. That's what everyone expected from Colonel Morrison's daughter. Pain was temporary. Failure was permanent. Darby phase in North Georgia had been worse. Patrolling through the mountains with 70-pound rucks and 40-pound weapon systems, leading squads on 3 hours of sleep over 5 days, making tactical decisions with a brain that felt like television static. She'd been recycled during mountain phase. In navigation error, she'd gotten her patrol lost, missed the objective window. The ranger instructor, a staff sergeant with dead eyes and a voice like gravel, had stopped the patrol and pulled her aside. "Ranger Morrison, you just got your entire patrol killed. Every one of them. Dead because you can't read a map. Recycle." She'd felt the weight of that failure like a physical thing. Had called her mother that night from a payphone, trying not to cry. "I failed, Mom. I got recycled. I let everyone down." Her mother's voice had been gentle. "Your father got recycled too. Mountain phase. Navigation error. Same as you. He came back and graduated at the top of his class." Catherine had never known that. The official records didn't mention it, just listed him as a distinguished honor graduate. "Come home," her mother had said. "You don't have to prove anything." "Yes, I do." She'd hung up, waited the required 30 days, came back, crushed the mountain phase, moved on to Florida for swamp phase. The final evolution had been brutal. Jungle operations, water movements, final patrol in the swamps of Eglin Air Force Base. Catherine's body had been broken. She'd lost 23 pounds, had stress fractures in both feet. Her hands were torn raw from climbing ropes with wet gloves. On the final patrol, she'd been selected as patrol leader. 24 hours, no sleep. Complex mission against an opposing force that knew every trick to make Rangers fail. She'd executed it perfectly. They'd pinned her Ranger tab on a Friday morning in February 2020. 3 women graduated that class. Catherine was one of them. She'd called her mother from the parking lot, sitting in her car, finally letting herself cry. "I did it, Mom. Your father would be so proud." But would he? Or would he think she was just trying to be him, trying to fill boots that were too big for anyone? Catherine's phone buzzed on her desk. She was in her office, really, just a corner of the company supply room with a desk chair and filing cabinet. 16:30 hours. The rain had stopped. The motor pool was quiet except for the sound of soldiers doing maintenance, checking equipment, preparing for JRTC. Text from Captain Robert Ashford, her company commander. "My office, 1800. Bring coffee. We need to talk." Catherine read it twice, deleted it, stood up. Brennan's comment from this morning had clearly reached the command team. Now came the reckoning. Either Ashford would back her up or he'd throw her to the wolves. She'd know in 90 minutes. She spent the time doing what her father had taught her. When in doubt work, she went to the motor pool, checked every vehicle assigned to 2nd Platoon, walked through pre-combat checks with each crew, corrected deficiencies, ensured every radio weapon and piece of equipment was mission capable. The soldiers watched her work, some with respect, some with skepticism, all wondering what would happen next. At 17:55, Catherine walked into the company headquarters building, 2 cups of coffee in her hands, black for Ashford, cream and sugar for herself. Old infantry tradition, never show up to a commander's office empty-handed. She knocked twice on his door. "Enter." Captain Robert Ashford sat behind his desk. 34 years old, former enlisted, had served as a sergeant in the 75th Ranger Regiment before going to officer candidate school. 3 deployments, Ranger tab, combat infantryman badge, a face that had seen violence and learned to live with it. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit. Close the door." Catherine closed the door, sat, set his coffee in front of him. Ashford took the coffee, sipped it, set it down carefully. "I'm hearing things about Staff Sergeant Brennan, about morale issues in 2nd Platoon, about comments being made in formation." Catherine kept her face neutral. "It's being handled, sir." "Is it?" Ashford leaned back in his chair. The springs creaked. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your squad leader is running a shadow command. Half your platoon respects you. The other half is watching to see if disrespecting you has consequences. Staff Sergeant Brennan is testing boundaries, Catherine said carefully. I'm managing it within my span of control. You've got 4 days until we roll to JRTC? Ashford's voice was flat, professional, the tone of a commander who'd made harder decisions than this, but didn't enjoy any of them. 4 days to get your platoon unified, because at JRTC the observer controller pressure will exploit any cracks in your foundation. If Brennan doesn't fall in line by then, your platoon won't function under evaluation stress. That gets people hurt. He paused. Notionally hurt during training, but the evaluation grades are real, and those grades affect your officer evaluation report, your career, your future. Understand? Yes, sir. Ashford opened his desk drawer, pulled out a file folder, set it on the desk between them, but didn't open it. I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you when you took command 2 weeks ago. Catherine waited. I deployed with your father, Iraq, 2003. I was a sergeant in Charlie Company, 2nd Battalion, 325th Airborne. Your father was our battalion commander. Catherine's stomach tightened. Everyone had deployed with her father. Everyone had a story. Most of them about his brilliance, his courage, his leadership, all of them ending the same way. Ashford continued. October 18th, 2004. Outside Fallujah, our patrol got hit. RPG on the lead vehicle. 3 wounded, including me. Took shrapnel to the leg and chest. I was bleeding out in the street. He pulled up his shirt, showed a scar running from his collarbone to his sternum. Thick, jagged. The kind of scar that came from combat surgeons working fast to save a life. Your father dismounted under fire, ran 50 meters through machine gun fire from multiple positions to reach us, dragged me and 2 other wounded to cover, called for casualty evacuation, held our position while we waited for the birds. Ashford lowered his shirt. The IED that killed him was in that building. He'd just gotten us loaded for evacuation when it detonated. Took out him and the 2 soldiers still with him, his radio operator and a combat medic. The office was silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Why are you telling me this, sir? Ashford met her eyes. Because I owe you the truth. Your father didn't die being reckless. He died doing what infantry officers do, leading from the front, protecting his soldiers. The Army gave him the Medal of Honor. But some people like Lieutenant Colonel Halford, think he was reckless, think he broke protocol, think commanders should stay in the Tactical Operations Center and let NCOs do the fighting. And what do you think, sir? I think I'm alive because he led from the front. I think 11 soldiers are alive in Afghanistan because you did the same thing during that ambush in Paktia province. And I think you need to decide, are you going to lead the way you know is right, or are you going to let Halford and Brennan and everyone else dictate how you command your platoon? Catherine absorbed this. Outside through the window, she could see soldiers moving through the company area, preparing, training, living their lives without knowing that every decision she made affected their futures as much as her own. Sir, if I lead from the front at JRTC, I'll violate doctrine. The observer controllers will mark me down. Lieutenant Colonel Halford will use it against me. Maybe. Ashford picked up the file folder, opened it. Or maybe they'll recognize a leader who earns loyalty by sharing risk. He slid a document across the desk. Classified, stamped secret in red letters across the top. Your father's after-action report from his final mission. It was declassified last year under the 20-year rule. Read it tonight, then decide how you'll handle Brennan. Catherine picked up the document, her father's words, written hours before he died. Sir, dismissed Lieutenant and Morrison. Ashford's voice softened slightly. Your father never tolerated disrespect, but he also never led through fear. He led through performance that left zero room for doubt. Catherine sat on the floor of her quarters that night, lights off, door locked. The room was sparse bed desk wall locker. Nothing personal except one framed photograph on the nightstand. Her father in dress uniform, taken 2 months before Fallujah. He was smiling. She had his eyes. Her laptop glowed in the darkness. The document open. Her father's words filling the screen. After action report, Operation Phantom Fury support, 18 October 2004. His handwriting in the margins. Notes, corrections, the careful precision of a commander who knew every word mattered. She read slowly. Mission conduct, mounted patrol, route Jackson. Provide security for logistics convoy. Respond to troops in contact as needed. Execution at 14:25 hours, lead vehicle struck by rocket-propelled grenade. Multiple wounded, I dismounted with radio operator and combat medic to provide immediate casualty care. Enemy fire from multiple positions, approximately 15 to 20 fighters. Established hasty defense. Called for casualty evacuation. Casualties sustained, 3 wounded in initial RPG strike. All 3 evacuated successfully. During final evacuation, secondary IED detonated. 3 additional casualties, including myself. The clinical language couldn't hide what had happened, couldn't hide the decision he'd made. Catherine scrolled down, found the section titled Lessons Learned. Commanders must be prepared to make immediate tactical decisions without waiting for higher approval. In combat, the plan dies at first contact. Leaders must be present with their soldiers to make real-time adjustments based on enemy action and terrain. Doctrine is a guide, not a script. Initiative and aggressive action save lives. The final line underlined twice in his handwriting. Mission first, people always. Catherine closed the laptop. Her body ached from 2 weeks of trying to outwork skepticism. Her right knee throbbed from an old airborne injury, a bad landing during a night jump at Fort Bragg 3 years ago. Her shoulders burned from carrying gear she didn't need to carry, but carried anyway because sharing the load meant trusting soldiers who didn't trust her yet. Physical pain was nothing. She'd learned that at Ranger School. Pain was just information. Discomfort was temporary. The mental weight was crushing. Her phone buzzed. Text from First Sergeant Sutherland. Brennan's squad is losing faith in the chain. Need to address before JRTC or we'll have a mutiny on our hands. She typed back. I will. Another text. Different number. Fort Campbell area code, but not saved in her contacts. Legacy hires fail at JRTC. Prove you're different. Catherine stared at the message, blocked the number, but the words stayed with her. She pulled out another photo from her desk drawer, one she kept hidden, her father's Medal of Honor citation. She'd memorized it years ago, but still read it sometimes when doubt crept in, when the weight felt too heavy. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Colonel William Morrison distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty while serving as battalion commander during combat operations in Fallujah, Iraq on 18 October 2004. What I say? She'd spent 20 years trying not to be him, trying to build her own identity, make her own name, prove her own worth separate from his shadow. But maybe that was wrong. Maybe instead of running from his shadow, she needed to step into it. Not to be him, she could never be him, but to honor what he'd built by building something herself. Her phone buzzed again. Captain Ashford. Saturday, 08:15, my office. Battalion's running a pre-JRTC shakedown. Your platoon goes first. Be ready. Catherine set the phone down, looked at her father's photo. The man in dress blues with ice blue eyes and a smile that didn't know he had 1 week left to live. I'm ready, she said to the empty room. I'm finally ready. Outside, Fort Campbell settled into night. Soldiers heading to the dining facility. Vehicles parked in motor pools. The calm before the storm. In 4 days, they'd roll to JRTC. In 4 days, Catherine would face the hardest test of her career. In 4 days, Lieutenant Colonel Halford would have her chance to prove that Catherine Morrison was just a name, not a leader. But tonight, for the first time in 2 weeks, Catherine felt something shift inside her. Not confidence, not yet, but determination. The same determination that had carried her through Ranger School, through Afghanistan, through 20 years of living in a shadow. She wasn't running anymore. She was done running. Saturday morning broke cold and gray over Fort Campbell. Catherine stood in the Alpha Company motor pool at 0600, watching her platoon assemble. 36 soldiers in full combat gear. ACUs dark with morning dew. Body armor. Kevlar helmets. Weapons. 70-pound rucksacks that would feel like 200 by kilometer 8. Specialist Madison Blake was the first to arrive. 24 years old. Blonde hair pulled into a tight bun. Athletic build from years of high school soccer in Pennsylvania. She'd enlisted at 18 to escape a dying steel town and hadn't looked back. Smart, competent, quietly watching everything. Blake approached Catherine, spoke quietly enough that only Catherine could hear. "Ma'am, can I talk to you privately?" Catherine looked up from checking radio frequencies. "Make it quick, Blake. We step off in 30 minutes." They walked to the edge of the motor pool, out of earshot from the rest of the platoon. Blake hesitated, then spoke. "Ma'am, I need to tell you something. Staff Sergeant Brennan's been talking to his squad. He's been telling people that your Bronze Star was—" She paused, choosing words carefully. "He's calling it a participation trophy, says you only got it because of politics, because of your father's name." Catherine's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Blake continued, "But ma'am, I looked up your Ranger School class. I know only 3 women graduated. I know you got recycled and came back. I read the after-action report from Afghanistan. Public version anyway. I know you earned every bit of that tab and that medal. Why are you telling me this, Blake? Because some of us believe in you, ma'am. Not all the platoon is with Brennan. Maybe half. The rest of us were watching you prove yourself every single day. We see it. We see that you can shoot, run, navigate, plan missions. We see that you care about us as soldiers, not just as names on a roster." Catherine studied the young specialist, saw something of herself in those eyes. The determination, the need to prove something to a world that didn't want to make room. "You know this puts you at odds with Brennan. He's your squad leader. With respect, ma'am, you're my platoon leader. Chain of command goes through you. If Brennan has a problem with that, he can request transfer." Catherine almost smiled. Almost. "Thank you, Blake, for telling me and for the vote of confidence. There's one more thing, ma'am." Blake hesitated. "Whatever happens today at JRTC, wherever this goes, lead the way you know is right. Some of us are watching to see if female soldiers can really make it in the infantry. Not just survive. Excel. You're setting the standard for all of us." After Blake left, Catherine stood alone in the motor pool. The weight on her shoulders felt heavier. Not just proving herself anymore. Proving it for every woman who had come after. Every female soldier who had faced the same skepticism, the same tests, the same impossible standards. No pressure at all. 400 meters away, Lieutenant Colonel Diane Halford sat in a command Humvee with her S3 operations officer and 2 senior observer controllers borrowed from the JRTC cadre. She had binoculars trained on Catherine's platoon. Watching, waiting. 12-kilometer course, Halford said, without lowering the binoculars. 4 tactical checkpoints. Final event is the shoot house. Time standard is 5 hours. Lieutenant Morrison's platoon goes first. The S3 officer, a major with 3 deployments and a chest full of ribbons, shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, that's a challenging course with only 48 hours notice." "It's supposed to be challenging, Major. That's the point." Halford lowered the binoculars. "I want to see how Morrison performs under pressure. When she can't rely on perfect planning and unlimited preparation time. When she has to make real-time decisions with incomplete information." "Yes, ma'am." Halford picked up a clipboard. Catherine's officer evaluation report was clipped to it. Multiple pages, most of them blank, waiting to be filled in. Her father made decisions under pressure too. Got himself killed for it. Left his command post. Exposed himself to enemy fire. Died playing hero instead of commanding from the rear where battalion commanders belong. She tapped the clipboard. "Let's see if the daughter has better judgment, or if she's doomed to repeat his mistakes." At exactly 0600, Catherine called her platoon to formation. "Listen up, mission brief, 12-kilometer land navigation course through Fort Campbell training areas. 4 checkpoints with tactical problems, casualty evacuation, equipment recovery, hasty ambush, defensive position. Final event is a live fire shoot house assault." She paused, let that sink in, saw the calculations on their faces. 12 kilometers with 70-pound rucks, full combat load, tactical problems at each checkpoint, all under evaluation by senior observer controllers. Time standard is 5 hours. That's aggressive but achievable. Staff Sergeant Brennan has point navigation. Squad leaders are responsible for your teams. I'll be moving with the main body evaluating performance, making real-time corrections. Specialist Blake raised her hand. "Ma'am, will you be moving with the formation or commanding from a vehicle?" The question hung in the air. in. Everyone knew what she was really asking. Will you lead from the front like your father, or will you stay safe in the rear like doctrine says you should? Catherine met Blake's eyes. I'll be moving with the main body, on foot, same load as everyone else. She turned to Brennan. Staff Sergeant, you have point. Set the pace. Keep it challenging but sustainable. We need everyone to finish. Brennan's face showed surprise. Then something else. Maybe respect. Maybe just curiosity. Roger that, ma'am. Outstanding. Any questions? Silence. Then let's move out. The first 4 kilometers were a test of endurance. Brennan set a hard pace, 15-minute miles with 70-pound rucks. Not brutal, but challenging. Designed to separate those who'd trained from those who'd slacked. By kilometer 3, 2 privates were struggling. Both fresh from infantry 1-station unit training at Fort Benning. Young, underconditioned, overpacked. Their faces were red-breathing, labored falling behind the formation. Brennan glanced back, saw them lagging, kept the pace. Catherine moved up beside the struggling soldiers. What's wrong? One of them, Private First Class Jensen, 19 years old from somewhere in Iowa, gasped for air. Ma'am, I can't keep up. Catherine assessed quickly, not injured, just young and carrying too much weight for his current fitness level. She called forward 2 soldiers from 3rd Squad. Both were veterans. Both had deployed to Afghanistan in 2019. Redistribute their ammunition, lighten their loads. Sergeant Martinez, one of the veterans, hesitated. Ma'am, the standard is for everyone to carry their basic load. The standard is for the platoon to complete the mission, Catherine cut him off. Her voice was level but carried authority. We succeed as a team or we fail as a team. Redistribute, now. Martinez and the other veteran took 40 pounds of ammunition from the 2 struggling privates, added it to their own already heavy loads. The young soldiers could breathe again. Color returned to their faces. The formation moved out. Brennan had watched this exchange from 50 meters ahead, said nothing, but noted it. Basic leadership principle. Adapt to your soldiers' capabilities. Accomplish the mission with the resources available. At kilometer 4, the first checkpoint appeared. A senior NCO with Ranger and Sapper tabs stood beside a mock casualty site. 2 dummies on the ground. Red smoke grenades marking their positions. The evaluator held up his hand. Platoon halt. Mission brief. IED strike 2 casualties. Enemy contact from 200 meters northeast. Execute casualty evacuation procedures. Time starts now. Brennan's squad was on point. He immediately began organizing. Called for security positions. Designated soldiers to assess casualties. Started a radio call for medical evacuation. But he made mistakes. Security positions were clustered too close together. East and west flanks were exposed. The casualties were being moved before proper assessment for spinal injuries. The radio call missed critical information. Grid coordinates were off by 200 meters. Would have sent the helicopters to the wrong location. Catherine watched for 30 seconds, evaluating, calculating, then stepped forward. Halt. Reset. Brennan looked up. Surprise crossed his face. Maybe embarrassment. Catherine addressed the entire platoon. Not just Brennan. Teaching, not berating. Here's what went wrong. Security positions need to be staggered. Right now, your east and west flanks are exposed. Any enemy with half a brain would flank you and roll up your position from the sides. Second, casualties must be assessed before movement. Check for spinal injuries first. Moving someone with a spinal injury can paralyze or kill them. Third, radio procedure. Use the 9-line medevac format, not abbreviated calls. Every piece of information matters when you're calling for birds. She demonstrated, positioned security correctly, showed proper casualty assessment technique, gave a perfect 9-line medevac call using the correct radio procedures and accurate grid coordinates. Now execute. Do it right this time. Second attempt was flawless. Completed in 8 minutes. The evaluator made notes on his clipboard. Pass. But your initial execution was slow and sloppy. Next checkpoint is at kilometer 7. Move out. 400 meters away, Lieutenant Colonel Halford watched through binoculars. She's micromanaging, Halford said into her radio, not letting her NCOs lead. That's a failure of trust. The S3 officer replied carefully. Ma'am, she's teaching them. correcting deficiencies in real time. That's what platoon leaders do during training. That's what weak platoon leaders do, Major. Strong ones trust their NCOs to execute without hand-holding. Halford made a note on her clipboard, then continued watching. Catherine's platoon moved to checkpoint 2, kilometer 7. The terrain had shifted from rolling hills to dense brush and steep inclines. Harder ground, more challenging footing. The evaluator pointed to a metal ammunition crate sitting at the bottom of a ravine. Had to weigh 180 pounds. Standard issue, the kind that held linked 7.62 millimeter ammunition for the M240 machine gun. Mission: move that crate to the rally point 300 meters north. Through this terrain, under simulated enemy fire. You have 15 minutes. Time starts now. Brennan tried to organize it, called for a 4-man team. Let's go. Grab and move. The team grabbed the crate, made it 50 meters. Coordination broke down almost immediately. Soldiers arguing about grip positions, about who should carry which corner, about the route. The crate dropped twice, time bleeding away. Catherine moved forward, voice calm, not angry. Stop, reset. She gathered the platoon around the crate. 2-person teams. You rotate every 50 meters. Squad leaders control the rotation timing. Strong soldiers pair with weaker soldiers for balance. Communicate constantly. Tell your partner when you're losing grip. Switch before you drop it, not after. Execute. This time the movement was smooth, coordinated. Each team knew their role. Each rotation happened cleanly. The crate moved uphill through dense brush without being dropped once. Completed in 7 minutes, half the projected time. The evaluator raised an eyebrow. Pass. Excellent time management. That's the kind of problem-solving we like to see. Next checkpoint, kilometer 10. Brennan approached Catherine as the platoon moved out, spoke quietly so only she could hear. Ma'am, I should have thought of the rotation system. You will next time, Catherine said. That's why we train. No ego, no rubbing it in, just teaching. Professional development. Brennan nodded. Something was shifting in his expression. The wall of skepticism developing cracks. Checkpoint 3 came at kilometer 10. The evaluator was a different NCO this time. Older, more weathered, a face that had seen multiple combat deployments and learned to read soldiers with a glance. Enemy patrol approaching from the south. Establish a linear ambush. Kill zone 50 meters. You have 10 minutes to position your forces. Execute. This time, Catherine took control from the beginning. She positioned every soldier personally. Kill zone, security elements, support by fire positions, demonstrated proper fields of fire, synchronized the engagement sequence, made sure everyone understood their sector, their responsibilities, their trigger discipline. The platoon executed flawlessly. Textbook ambush, the kind taught at Ranger School and refined through years of combat experience. The evaluator approached Catherine after. Genuine respect in his voice. Outstanding, Lieutenant. That was Ranger School level execution. Where did you learn to run an ambush like that? I earned my tab, Sergeant. Same place you did. The evaluator grinned, tapped his own Ranger tab. Hoo-ah, ma'am, that's exactly how it's done. Pass with honors, move to final checkpoint. 400 meters away, Halford's voice came through the radio. Cold, clipped. She's showing off, fighting from the front like a squad leader, not a platoon leader, exposing herself unnecessarily. She's reckless, just like her father. The S3 officer was writing notes. Ma'am, respectfully, the platoon is responding well to her leadership style. Morale is high, execution is improving at each checkpoint. The soldiers trust her. Because she's micromanaging every detail. Wait until JRTC when she has to delegate under real pressure. When she can't be everywhere at once. That's when leaders who don't trust their subordinates fail. Halford made another note, building a case, documenting everything. The final checkpoint was the shoot house, a 2-story structure built specifically for close quarters battle training. 20 targets inside, mix of threats and non-threats, armed enemies and civilian mannequins. Each squad would run it individually, timed, graded on speed and accuracy. First squad went first. 2 minutes, 20 seconds. 1 miss. Solid performance. Third squad went next. 2 minutes, 5 seconds. 0 misses. Excellent target discrimination. Second squad, Brennan's squad, went third. 1 minute, 55 seconds. 0 misses. Perfect execution. Catherine's squad went last. Fourth squad, 9 soldiers. She would lead from the front. They stacked on the door. Catherine at point position. Weapon ready, safety off. Breathing controlled. The evaluator's voice. Execute. Catherine breached the door, flowed through the entry. First room. 2 threats. 1 civilian. She engaged the threats. Double tap each. Center mass. Ignored the civilian. Moved to the next room. Her team flowed behind her. Perfect spacing. Perfect communication. Each soldier covering their sector. No wasted movement. No hesitation. Second floor. Stairwell. 3 threats at the top. Catherine engaged while moving. Hit all 3. Kept momentum. The team surged through. Final room. Complex scenario. 4 targets. 2 threats mixed with 2 civilians. Children. The kind of scenario designed to make you hesitate, make you second guess. Catherine identified threats in milliseconds. Engaged, double tap each, ignored the civilians, cleared the room. Clear chat. The evaluator's stopwatch clicked. Time, 1 minute 38 seconds, 0 misses, perfect target discrimination. He approached Catherine as her squad exited the shoot house. Ma'am, that was the fastest clean run I've seen in 6 months of running this course. Where'd you learn to clear rooms like that? Ranger School Sergeant in Afghanistan. You learn fast when mistakes get people killed. First Sergeant Sutherland had been watching from the observation area. He approached now, face still unreadable, but something in his eyes suggested approval. Outstanding LT, outstanding work from the entire platoon. Catherine called formation. All 36 soldiers gathered, tired, sweaty, proud. They'd just completed something difficult, and they knew it. Catherine stood at the center, met every soldier's eyes, let the silence build for 3 seconds, then spoke. Some of you think I'm here because of my father's name. Her voice carried across the formation. Level, strong, no defensiveness. You're partially right. I am William Morrison's daughter. That opened doors. I won't pretend it didn't, but I walked through those doors the same way you did, by meeting the standard. She paused. I went to Ranger School. 62 days. Got recycled once in the mountains because I failed a navigation patrol. Could have quit, could have blamed the instructors or the weather or bad luck. Instead, I came back. Finished. I deployed to Afghanistan, led soldiers under fire in Paktia province. My radio operator, Sergeant Trent Holloway, was killed in the first 30 seconds of an ambush. I couldn't save him. That failure lives with me every day, but I saved 11 other soldiers because that's what leaders do. We fight through the fear and the chaos and we bring our people home. Her voice hardened slightly. I don't expect you to respect my name. I expect you to respect my competence. If you can't do that, if you think I'm just riding my father's legacy, then request a transfer. Captain Ashford will approve it. No questions asked. She looked directly at Brennan. But if you stay, you follow orders. You perform. You trust that I will never send you anywhere I won't go first. The formation was silent. 36 soldiers holding their breath. Catherine's voice softened slightly. Staff Sergeant Brennan, you have been testing me for 2 weeks. I understand why. You wanted to know if I was real. Now you know, so here's your choice. Get on board or request transfer to another platoon. Decide now. 10 seconds of absolute silence. The entire platoon waited. Then Brennan stepped forward, came to attention, saluted with parade ground precision. Ma'am, I'm on board, and I apologize for being unprofessional. It won't happen again. Catherine returned the salute. Outstanding, Staff Sergeant. Now let's get ready to dominate at JRTC. The platoon erupted. Not cheering soldiers don't cheer, but a low growl of approval that came from somewhere deep in the chest. Hooah! 400 meters away, Lieutenant Colonel Halford lowered her binoculars. Her face was tight, controlled, but anger simmered beneath the surface. She turned to her S3 officer. Get me those evaluation the scores, all of them. Individual comments from each observer controller. I want them on my desk by 1800 hours. Ma'am, the evaluators graded them pass on all lanes. I said, get me the scores, Major. All of them. Yes, ma'am. Halford climbed into her Humvee, slammed the door. As they drove away, she was already planning her next move. The shakedown exercise had been easy. Controlled environment, limited stress. Catherine had performed well, but that proved nothing. JRTC would be different. 2 weeks of sustained operations, sleep deprivation, dedicated opposing force designed to exploit weaknesses, complex scenarios with no clear solutions. That's where leaders broke. That's where the ones who couldn't hack it revealed themselves. Halford would make sure of it. That evening, Catherine sat in her quarters. The adrenaline from the day had faded, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Her body ached. Her feet were blistered from 12 kilometers in boots that needed breaking in. Her shoulders burned from the ruck. But something had shifted. Brennan's salute. The platoon's response. Blake's quiet confidence. For the first time since taking command, Catherine felt like she had a foundation to build on. Her phone buzzed. Text from Captain Ashford. Good work today. Keep the momentum. Battalion commander wants to see evaluation scores. Be ready for Sunday brief at 0900. Catherine read it twice. Battalion commander wants to see evaluation scores. That meant Halford was building a case, looking for ammunition. Another text. Different number. The same unknown Fort Campbell area code from before. Shakedown was easy. JRTC will break you. Enjoy your success while it lasts. Catherine stared at the message. Read it 3 times, then deleted it and blocked the number. She pulled out the photograph of her father, the one from his final mission, running toward wounded soldiers under fire. Seconds before the IED detonated, a combat photographer had captured it. The image had won awards, had been published in magazines, had become iconic. Her father mid-stride, weapon raised, eyes focused forward, running toward danger instead of away from it. Catherine set the photo on her desk beside her Ranger tab and Bronze Star. 3 pieces of her identity, 3 pieces of who she was becoming. A knock on her door. She opened it. Staff Sergeant Brennan stood there, out of uniform, civilian clothes, face serious. Ma'am, can we talk outside? They walked to the edge of the company area, away from other soldiers, away from prying eyes and ears. The night was cold, clear, stars visible overhead in a way they never were back home in the cities. Brennan spoke first. I need to tell you the whole story about Trent Holloway. Catherine waited. We went through basic training together, Fort Benning 2012, became best friends, deployed to Afghanistan together in 2019, different units but same area of operations, stayed in touch. He paused, struggling with something. Trent got reassigned to your platoon in 2022. I stayed here at Campbell, different deployment cycle. When I heard he was KIA, his voice caught. I blamed the platoon leader. I didn't know it was you specifically. I just blamed, because it was easier than accepting that sometimes good soldiers die, and there's nothing anyone could do. Then I got assigned into your platoon. When I learned your name, I did research, found the after-action report from your firefight. Read it 3 times. Trent died in the first 30 seconds. Killed instantly. You saved the other 11. Brennan's voice broke. I was angry at you for surviving when he didn't. That's not rational. That's not fair. But that's what I felt. So I made you prove yourself twice as hard. Made you earn respect I should have given freely. And I'm sorry. Catherine was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. Trent was a good soldier. I think about him every day. Every decision I make, I think about the soldiers who didn't come home. I carry that weight, but I can't let it paralyze me. I have to keep leading, keep moving forward, because that's what they would want. I know that now, Brennan said, and I want you to know whatever happens at JRTC, whatever comes next, Second Squad has your back all the way. Thank you, Marcus. First time she'd used his first name. That means more than you know. They stood there for a moment, 2 soldiers connected by loss and shared purpose. Then Brennan saluted and walked away. Catherine returned to her quarters, but sleep wouldn't come. Too much adrenaline, too many thoughts. She opened her laptop, pulled up the classified document Captain Ashford had given her. Her father's after-action report. Read it again. Looking for something? Guidance maybe? Or permission? One passage stood out. Initiative and aggressive actions save lives. Commanders who wait for perfect information or higher approval often miss the critical window where action matters most. Trust your instincts. Trust your training. Lead from where you can make the greatest impact. Catherine closed the laptop. Her father had led from the front, had paid for it with his life, but he'd saved 14 soldiers in the process. Was that recklessness? Or was it leadership? At Lieutenant Colonel Halford's house, 8 miles from Fort Campbell, Diane Halford sat at her kitchen table with a glass of wine and Catherine's personnel file spread in front of her. Her husband, a retired logistics officer, had gone to bed hours ago, but Halford couldn't sleep. She'd spent 30 years in the Army, 30 years fighting for every promotion, every assignment, every opportunity. She'd been the first woman in her West Point class to make captain, the first to command a company, the first to make lieutenant colonel in combat arms. And she'd done it by being perfect, by never giving critics ammunition, by following every rule, every regulation, every doctrine to the letter. She'd never taken unnecessary risks, never exposed herself to danger she could avoid, never led from the front when the rear was safer and more appropriate for her rank. And now, Catherine Morrison, with her famous father and her Ranger tab and her Bronze Star, was doing everything Halford had spent 30 years avoiding, leading from the front, taking personal risks, breaking protocol to save soldiers. If Catherine succeeded, it would prove that Halford's careful approach had been wrong, that taking risk was the right way, that women could lead like men without compromising safety or effectiveness. And Halford couldn't allow that, couldn't let everything she'd built be undermined by a 28-year-old lieutenant with a death wish and a famous name. She picked up her phone, sent a secure text to the JRTC Senior Observer Controller. Lieutenant Morrison's platoon's 2nd Platoon Alpha Company will arrive in 4 days. I need your most challenging scenarios, most complex missions. I want her tested to the absolute limit. The response came 90 seconds later. Understood, ma'am. We'll make sure she earns every passing grade or fails trying. Halford finished her wine, closed Catherine's file. Tomorrow she'd brief the battalion on Monday's shakedown exercise results. She'd highlight the positives, couldn't ignore Catherine's performance, but she'd also note the concerns, the micromanaging, the personal risk-taking, the violation of doctrinal positions for platoon leaders, building a case. One observation at a time. Sunday morning, 0900, battalion conference room. Catherine stood at attention in front of Lieutenant Colonel Halford's desk. Captain Ashford stood beside her. The S3 Major sat at the conference table with evaluation reports spread in front of him. Halford looked up from the reports. Her face was neutral, professional, but her eyes were cold. Lieutenant Morrison, Saturday's shakedown exercise. Your platoon performed adequately on all tactical lanes. The observer controllers graded you pass across the board. Thank you, ma'am. However, Halford emphasized the word, I have concerns about your command style. You micromanaged your NCOs at multiple checkpoints. You personally led the shoot house assault instead of commanding from the rear. You exposed yourself to unnecessary risk throughout the exercise. Catherine kept her face neutral. Ma'am, I was conducting on-the-spot corrections during training. That's appropriate for a platoon leader. It's appropriate for weak leaders who don't trust their subordinates. Halford cut her off. Strong leaders delegate. They trust their NCOs to execute. They command from positions where they can see the entire battlefield, not from the front where their vision is limited. Captain Ashford shifted slightly. Ma'am, if I may, Lieutenant Morrison's approach resulted in flawless execution on all lanes. Her platoon completed the course in record time. Because she did everything herself, Captain. Halford's voice hardened. That's not sustainable. At JRTC, she won't be able to micromanage every detail. She'll have to trust her NCOs. And based on Saturday's performance, I have serious doubts about her ability to do that. She closed the file. Lieutenant Morrison, you will deploy to JRTC on Thursday. You will be evaluated on your ability to command your platoon, not lead it like a squad leader. If you continue to expose yourself to unnecessary risk, if you continue to violate doctrinal command positions, I will document it. and it will affect your evaluation report. Are we clear? Crystal, ma'am. Dismissed. Catherine and Ashford walked out together. Once they were in the hallway out of earshot, Ashford spoke quietly. She's setting you up to fail. I know, sir. So what are you going to do? Catherine was silent for a moment. Then she met his eyes. I'm going to lead the way I know is right, and let the results speak for themselves. Ashford almost smiled. Good, because that's exactly what your father would have said. That night, Catherine received one final message. Same unknown number, despite being blocked. The message was a photo, her father's final mission, but this time a different angle. Closer, she could see his face clearly, determined, focused, running toward danger. Below the photo, 3 words. He broke protocol. No signature, no explanation. Catherine stared at the photo for a long time. Then she saved it to her phone, set it as her lock screen. Tomorrow they'd begin final preparations for JRTC. In 4 days they'd roll out. In 4 days she'd face the test that would define her career. She looked at her father's photo one more time, then closed her eyes and tried to sleep. The convoy rolled out of Fort Campbell at 0500 on Thursday morning. 17 vehicles. Alpha Company loaded for 2 weeks at the Joint Readiness Training Center in Louisiana. Catherine sat in the lead Humvee of 2nd Platoon's Element, watching Kentucky disappear in the side mirror as they merged onto Interstate 24 heading south. Specialist Madison Blake was driving. Staff Sergeant Cole Brennan sat in the passenger seat. Catherine was in the back, surrounded by radio equipment maps and the weight of everything that was coming. The drive would take 11 hours, plenty of time to think. Too much time. Catherine pulled out her notebook, the one she'd been keeping since West Point. On the first page, written in her father's handwriting, from a letter he'd sent her when she was 8 years old, were 3 words. Lead with courage. She'd found the letter after his death, tucked in a box of his belongings her mother had saved. A letter written to his daughter for when she was older. For when she needed guidance he couldn't give in person. The rest of the letter talked about values, about honor and duty and sacrifice, about how real leaders didn't ask soldiers to do anything they wouldn't do themselves, about how command was a privilege that came with responsibility. Lead with courage. They arrived at JRTC just after 1600 hours. The sun was setting over Louisiana pine forests. The air was thick with humidity even in early spring. Bugs everywhere. The smell of swamp and diesel fuel. The Joint Readiness Training Center was 3,200 square kilometers of hell designed to simulate combat operations. Towns built specifically for urban warfare training. Opposition forces trained to think and fight like real enemies. Observer controllers embedded with every unit to grade every decision, every action, every mistake. 2 weeks here would determine careers, separate leaders from pretenders. Test soldiers under conditions as close to combat as training could get. Alpha Company was assigned to Forward Operating Base Eagle, a collection of tense barriers and tactical operations centers set up to simulate a deployed environment. They'd have 24 hours to prepare. Then the evaluation would begin. Catherine gathered her platoon after they downloaded equipment from the vehicles. 36 soldiers stood in formation, tired from the drive, but alert, ready. We've got 24 hours before first mission, Catherine said. We'll use every minute. Squad leaders, I want weapons checks, communications checks, and rehearsals for urban operations. First Sergeant Sutherland will brief the sleep and meal schedule. We rotate rest so someone's always alert. Questions? Brennan raised his hand. Ma'am, do we know what our first mission is? Not yet. Battalion will brief us tomorrow at 0700. Until then, we prepare for everything. That night, Catherine sat in the Tactical Operations Center reviewing intelligence reports on the opposing force. The OPFOR here were legendary. Soldiers who'd spent years learning to fight like insurgents, like conventional military threats, like every enemy American forces had faced. They knew every trick, every ambush site, every way to make blue forces fail. First Sergeant Sutherland found her at 2300 hours. LT, you need to sleep. Tomorrow starts early. I will. Just want to understand what we're facing. Sutherland sat down across from her. His face was tired. 2 decades of service etched into every line. I've been through JRTC 4 times. You want to know the secret? Yes, First Sergeant. There is no secret. OPFOR will hit you when you're tired, when you're hungry, when you think you've got a handle on things. They'll exploit every weakness, every gap in your planning. He paused. The only way through is to trust your soldiers, trust your training, and make decisions fast even when you don't have all the information. That's what my father's after-action report said. Trust your instincts. Your father was a good man, a great commander. I never served with him directly, but I knew people who did. Sutherland's voice softened. He led from the front. Some people think that got him killed. I think it earned him loyalty that saved 14 soldiers when everything went to hell. Catherine looked up. First Sergeant, do you think I'm reckless? No, ma'am. I think you're a leader who understands that soldiers follow actions, not words. But I also think Lieutenant Colonel Halford is watching for you to make mistakes. So you need to be smart about when to lead from the front and when to command from the rear. How do I know which is which? Sutherland stood up. You'll know. When the moment comes, you'll know. Day 1 of evaluation began at 0700 with a mission brief. Urban assault. Clear a 3-story building in a simulated town called Shughart-Gordon. Capture a high-value target. Exploit the site for intelligence. Extract under contact. Catherine's platoon would lead the assault. Bravo Company would provide support. Charlie Company would establish the outer cordon. Mission time 0100 hours. Under night vision goggles. 6 hours to plan and rehearse. Catherine gathered her squad leaders in the TOC. Spread out the map and overhead imagery. 3-story building, multiple entry points, unknown number of enemy inside. Will breach simultaneously from 2 points main entrance and rear access. 1st and 2nd squads take main entrance. 3rd and 4th squads take rear. I'll move with 2nd squad to the main breach point. Brennan spoke up. Ma'am, with respect, shouldn't you be at a command position where you can see the whole objective? It was the question Catherine had known was coming. The test. I need to be where I can make real-time decisions based on what's actually happening, not what I think is happening from 300 meters away. The building interior is unknown. Plans die at first contact. I need to be inside to adjust on the fly. Brennan nodded slowly. Roger that, ma'am. They rehearsed twice. Full mission profile. Every soldier knew their job. Entry sequences, room clearing procedures, casualty evacuation plans, exfiltration routes. At midnight, they loaded into vehicles. Moved to the objective area under Blackout Drive. No headlights. Just night vision and careful navigation. Catherine checked her gear one final time. M4 rifle, 6 magazines, night vision goggles, radio, flex cuffs for prisoner handling, first aid kit. Her hands were steady, heart rate controlled. This was it. 0100 hours. The assault began. Explosives breached both entry points simultaneously. Flashbang grenades. Then soldiers flowing through like water. Catherine was 3rd through the main entrance. Brennan ahead of her. Specialist Blake behind. First room, 2 up for fighters. Brennan engaged, double tap each, moved to the next room without stopping. Catherine flowed with him, cleared her sector. Second room had a civilian, woman with child. Catherine identified them, did not engage, moved on. Third room was where it went bad. 3 op for fighters, 1 had an RPG, in close quarters. Brennan engaged the first 2. The third brought the RPG up. Catherine saw it happening in slow motion. If that RPG fired in this confined space, everyone in the room died. She moved without thinking. Closed the distance in 2 steps. Struck the offer soldier's weapon aside with her rifle barrel. Followed with a buttstock strike to the face. The man went down. The RPG clattered to the floor. Secure that weapon! Catherine's voice was sharp. Blake grabbed the RPG, made it safe. Brennan was staring at her. Ma'am, you just keep moving. We have an objective to complete. They cleared the rest of the first floor, moved to the second. 3rd and 4th squads were making progress from the rear. Radio traffic confirmed enemy resistance was collapsing. Second floor, 4 more rooms. Catherine's element cleared them methodically. Found the high-value target in the last room. A man in civilian clothes with intelligence materials spread on a table. Secure him. Bag the intelligence. We're leaving in 2 minutes. They had the HVT flex cuffed and the intelligence and materials collected in 90 seconds. Then came the problem. The radio crackled. 3rd squad, contact rear exit, heavy fire, were pinned down. 2 casualties. Catherine made the decision in 3 seconds. First squad, establish security on our exfil route. Second squad, we're going to third squad's position. Follow me. She didn't wait for acknowledgement, just moved. Through corridors, downstairs, toward the sound of gunfire. Third squad was pinned at the rear exit by Opfer, positioned in buildings across the street. Simulated machine gun fire. Simulated RPG rounds. 2 soldiers down with simulated wounds. The squad leader was trying to organize a defense, but they were stuck. Catherine assessed in seconds. Opfer had the high ground. Standard doctrine said call for fire support and wait. But fire support would take time. Time those wounded soldiers didn't have in a real scenario. She made the call. Brennan, suppressive fire on target building. Blake gets smoke on that street. Third squad, prepare to move casualties on my mark. They executed. Heavy fire on the Opfer position. Smoke grenades creating concealment. Catherine personally ran into the street under simulated fire. Grabbed one of the casualties. A private who weighed 190. Dead weight and full gear. She dragged him to cover. Went back for the second casualty. Brennan was beside her now. Both of them under fire. Both of them moving. They got both casualties to cover. Called for the extraction vehicles. Got everyone loaded. The mission was complete. 23 minutes from breach to exfil. HVT captured. Intelligence secured. All friendly forces extracted. No one left behind. The observer controller approached Catherine as they downloaded at the feed. His face was unreadable. Lieutenant Morrison, that was aggressive urban combat leadership. Your assault was textbook. Your improvisation when third squad got pinned was creative. He paused. But you personally exposed yourself to enemy fire during the casualty extraction. That's a violation of command position doctrine. You should have been at the TOC coordinating, not in the street dragging casualties. Catherine kept her face neutral. With respect, Sergeant, my soldiers were in danger. I made the call that saved them. You made a call that could have gotten you killed if this was real combat. Platoon leaders who die in the first 15 minutes don't lead anyone. He made notes on his clipboard. Mission rating satisfactory. Leadership rating needs improvement. You got the job done, but you took unnecessary personal risk. Catherine said nothing, just saluted and walked away. 400 meters away in the Senior Observer Controller facility, Lieutenant Colonel Halford was reviewing the same assessment. She picked up her phone, called the OC who just briefed Catherine. Sergeant First Class Martinez, your assessment of Lieutenant Morrison's mission. I need you to emphasize the leadership deficiencies in your written report. She exposed herself to enemy fire. She left her command position. That's reckless behavior that needs to be documented. Martinez hesitated. Ma'am, with respect, she saved 2 casualties by moving fast. In real combat, that's the kind of leadership that earns loyalty. In real combat, sergeant platoon leaders who play hero get themselves killed. Write the report as I directed. That's an order. Yes, ma'am. Halford hung up, made notes in Catherine's file. Mission 1 complete. Leadership deficiencies noted. Building the case. Day 3. Mounted patrol mission. Catherine's platoon would conduct route reconnaissance on main supply route Atlanta. Intelligence indicated possible IED threat in enemy ambush positions. The brief came at 0600. Catherine listened carefully. Something felt wrong. The intelligence was too specific, too detailed. Like someone wanted them to know about the threats. She pulled Brennan aside after the brief. This smells like a trap. Agreed, ma'am. Question is, do we follow the assigned route or request alternate? Catherine thought about it. Requesting an alternate route would be the safe call, the doctrinal call, but it would also look like fear, like she couldn't handle the mission as assigned. We take the route, but we modify procedures, wider vehicle spacing, dismounted scouts ahead of the lead vehicle, overwatch positions before we commit to danger areas. That's going to slow us way down, ma'am. Slow and alive beats fast and dead. They rolled out at 0800, 4 Humvees, 2nd platoon mounted, moving at careful pace down main supply route Atlanta through simulated Iraqi countryside. At kilometer 7, exactly where intelligence had indicated the IED detonated. Simulated, but realistic enough. Brennan's vehicle was the target. The vehicle stopped. The evaluator called out casualties. Driver and vehicle commander simulated wounded. 3 additional soldiers simulated critical, including Brennan. Catherine's vehicle was 50 meters behind. She saw it happen, saw the vehicle stop, saw the orange panel indicating IED strike, then saw the opposing force open fire from 3 positions. Complex ambush. Exactly as the intelligence had predicted. Catherine's mind went cold, clear, training and instinct taking over. All vehicles halt. Establish security. Second squad suppress enemy position northeast. Third squad suppress southeast. First squad, you're with me. We're securing that casualty vehicle. Her driver spoke up. Ma'am, doctrine says hold position and call for a quick reaction force. Doctrine doesn't account for soldiers bleeding out. Move. They moved. Catherine's vehicle pulled up beside Brennan's. She was out before it stopped. Radio in one hand, weapon in the other. Fire mission. Grid November, Victor 367458. Enemy position tree line northeast. Danger close. Fire for effect. The simulated mortar fire came in 30 seconds later. Suppressing the OOP for positions. Catherine used the window. Organized first squad to extract the casualties from Brennan's vehicle. Got them loaded. Got everyone accounted for. Brennan was conscious. Simulated wound to the leg and chest. He looked up at Catherine. You came for us. Always. No one gets left behind. They called for medical evacuation. Established security until the birds arrived. Got everyone extracted. The mission was complete. The observer controller approached. Different one this time. A captain with 3 deployments and a face that had seen it all. Lieutenant Morrison, that was instinctive leadership under fire. You organized an immediate action drill under contact. You coordinated indirect fire support, danger close. You personally led the casualty extraction. Catherine waited for the but you once again left your command vehicle to personally extract casualties. You exposed yourself to enemy fire. You violated the doctrine that says platoon leaders command from protected positions. Sir, my soldiers were in danger. I understand that, Lieutenant. I do. But you need to understand that the Army can replace soldiers. It can't replace leaders as easily. When you risk yourself, you risk the entire platoon's leadership capability. He made notes. Mission rating satisfactory. You got everyone home. But leadership rating needs improvement. Same issue as Mission 1. You're too willing to expose yourself to danger. Catherine saluted, walked away. Her hands were shaking now, not from fear, from anger. That night, Captain Ashford found her in the TOC, sat down across from her. I saw the after-action reports from your first 2 missions. Yes, sir. The observer controllers are grading you satisfactory on mission execution, but needs improvement on leadership style. Because I lead from the front instead of commanding from the rear. Correct. Ashford was quiet for a moment. Lieutenant Colonel Halford is coordinating with the senior OCs. She's making sure every time you expose yourself to risk gets documented. She's building a case that you're reckless. So what do I do, sir? Let my soldiers get hurt while I sit in a safe vehicle 300 meters away? No, you trust your NCOs to do their jobs while you command the big picture. Ashford leaned forward. Catherine, I understand the instinct to lead from the front. Your father had the same instinct, but you need to understand that Halford has a point. Platoon leaders who die in the first engagement don't save anyone. My father saved 14 soldiers by leading from the front, and died doing it, left his wife a widow and his daughter without a father. Ashford's voice was gentle but firm. Is that the legacy you want? Is that the example you want to set? Catherine had no answer. Ashford stood up. Final mission is in 3 days. Platoon live raid on defended compound. It's the most complex scenario JRTC runs. Everything you've done leads to this. Pass it, and you pass JRTC. Fail it, and Halford has everything she needs to recommend your relief from command. Yes, sir. And Catherine, and make the right call, not the brave call, the right one. Day 9, 2 days before the final mission, Catherine gathered her platoon for a planning session. They had 48 hours to prepare for the most complex tactical scenario of the rotation. Mission brief raid defended compound at night. High-value target inside. Unknown number of enemy fighters. Sensitive site exploitation required. Extract under contact. Time limit 30 minutes from breach to exfil. Catherine spread out maps and overhead imagery. All 4 squad leaders present. First Sergeant Sutherland. The entire leadership element. This is everything we've trained for, everything we've practiced. The compound has multiple buildings. Unknown interior layout. OPFER will fight hard because this is their final stand scenario. She looked around the table. I want input from everyone. This isn't my plan, it's our plan. Brennan, what do you see? Brennan studied the imagery. Multiple entry points. We need simultaneous breaches to overwhelm their defenses, but that means splitting our force. Risk is we lose coordination. Blake spoke up. Ma'am, we need a command and control position outside the compound. Someone coordinating all the elements. Someone who can see the big picture. Catherine knew what Blake was really saying. Someone who wasn't inside leading the breach. Sutherland added his voice. LT, I've been through this scenario 3 times. It's designed to overwhelm small unit leaders. The platoon leader needs to be outside coordinating. Let your squad leaders lead the breaches. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Every instinct screamed to be in the breach, leading from the front, like her father, like she'd always done. But Ashford's words echoed, make the right call, not the brave call. All right, here's the plan. 4 simultaneous breaches. Each squad takes 1 entry point. First Sergeant, you'll be mobile inside coordinating between squads. I'll be at the command post 300 meters from the objective with radio contact to all elements in supporting fires. Brennan looked surprised. Ma'am, are you sure? No, but it's the right call. You're my squad leaders. You're trained for this. I need to trust you to execute. They spent 2 days rehearsing, full mission profile, every contingency. Every soldier knew their role. Catherine forced herself to stay at the command post position during rehearsals. Forced herself to trust her squad leaders. It was the hardest thing she'd ever done. Day 11, final mission, 0200 hours. Catherine stood at her command post position, 300 meters from the objective compound. She had radio contact with all 4 squads, indirect fire support, medical evacuation, and quick reaction force. She could see the compound through night vision. 4 entry points. Her squad's in position, waiting for her command. This was it. Everything came down to the next 30 minutes. All elements, this is Sabre 2-1. Stand by for breach. Her voice was steady, professional, hiding the fear underneath. Breach in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Execute. Explosives detonated simultaneously at all 4 entry points. Flashbangs, then soldiers flowing through. Catherine watched on night vision, saw her platoon disappear into the compound, heard radio traffic. First squad, first floor clear, moving to second. Third squad, rear section secure, 1 enemy KA. Fourth squad, contact second floor, heavy resistance. Catherine coordinated. Second squad, reinforce fourth squad's position. First squad, continue advance. Third squad, secure the HVT if located. The battle unfolded like a symphony, each element moving. Catherine conducting from 300 meters away. Adjusting, coordinating, trusting. Then Brennan's voice, urgent. Sabre 2-1, we've got the HVT, but fourth squad has 2 casualties. Enemy reinforcements moving to their position. Need support now. Catherine made the call. All elements collapse on fourth squad's position. First Sergeant, take command inside. I'm calling for immediate fire mission on enemy reinforcement route. She switched frequencies, called for mortars, gave coordinates. Danger close. The fire came in 30 seconds later, cut off the enemy reinforcements. Inside, Sutherland organized the extraction, got the casualties moved, got the HVT secured, got all elements consolidated for exfiltration. Sabre 2-1, this is Sabre 2-7. We're ready for extract. All personnel accounted for, HVT secure, intelligence materials collected. Catherine's voice was steady. Roger, extract to Rally Point Bravo, air assets inbound. Good work, First Sergeant. The helicopters came in, got everyone loaded. The mission was complete. 28 minutes from breach to final extraction. The observer controller approached Catherine at the command post. a lieutenant colonel with 30 years in the Army and more deployments than Catherine had years of service. Lieutenant Morrison, that was exceptional platoon-level planning and execution. You coordinated 4 simultaneous breaches. You adjusted fires in real time to support your elements. You trusted your NCOs to execute while you commanded from a position where you could see the whole battlefield. He paused. Mission rating outstanding. Leadership rating outstanding. That's the kind of command and control we want to see from platoon leaders. Catherine felt something release in her chest. Relief, vindication, exhaustion. Thank you, sir. Your platoon performed at a level we rarely see here. I'm recommending you for honor graduate status for this rotation. Well done. After he left, Catherine sat down. Her legs were shaking, the adrenaline draining away. Brennan found her 20 minutes later. Ma'am, I need to say something. Go ahead, Staff Sergeant. I was wrong. When you said you'd command from the rear, I thought maybe you'd lost your nerve. Lost that fire that made you who you are. He paused. But watching you tonight, coordinating everything, trusting us to do our jobs while you did yours, that took more courage than leading any breach. You made the hard call, the right call. Thank you, Marcus. That means more than you know. First Sergeant Sutherland approached with the rest of the squad leaders, all of them tired, all of them proud. LT, I've been in the Army 23 years. That was the best platoon-level operation I've been part of. You trusted us. You led us, and you brought everyone home. That's all any soldier can ask. Catherine stood up, looked at her leadership team, these men who doubted her, tested her, and now stood with her. We did this together, every one of you. This platoon, these soldiers, this mission, it's ours, not mine, ours. The final morning at JRTC, formation for awards and recognition. The entire battalion assembled. Lieutenant Colonel Halford would present awards and give final assessments. Catherine stood in formation with her platoon, waiting. Halford took the podium. Her face was neutral, professional, but Catherine could see the tension underneath. This rotation tested every soldier, every leader, every unit. Some exceeded standards, some met standards, some did not. She paused. Let the words sink in. 2nd Platoon Alpha Company, 1st Lieutenant Catherine Morrison commanding. Stand fast. Catherine's platoon remained in formation while others were dismissed to the side. Halford approached, held up a certificate. 2nd Platoon, you are the honor graduate platoon for this rotation. Your performance across all missions was exceptional. Your final raid was the highest rated platoon operation we've evaluated in 18 months. She handed the certificate to Catherine. Their eyes met. Halford's face was tight, controlled anger beneath the professional exterior. Lieutenant Morrison, you demonstrated exceptional tactical skill and leadership growth during this rotation. Your ability to adapt your command style and trust your subordinates in the final mission showed maturity beyond your years. The words sounded forced, rehearsed. I'm putting you in for an Army Commendation Medal. Thank you, ma'am. Halford's voice dropped lower. Only Catherine could hear. You got lucky. Your squad leaders were good enough to make up for your reckless tendencies earlier in the rotation. Don't mistake luck for competence. Catherine kept her face neutral. With respect, ma'am, it wasn't luck. It was training trust in the kind of leadership my father taught me, know when to lead from the front and when to command from the rear. Halford's eyes flashed, but she said nothing, just saluted and moved on. After the formation, Captain Ashford found Catherine. Well done, LT. Halford had to eat crow in front of the entire battalion. She was hoping you'd fail. Instead, you became the honor graduate. She'll find other ways to come after me, sir. Probably, but right now you've got documentation that you're one of the best platoon leaders in this battalion. That's ammunition for your career. What happens to Lieutenant Colonel Halford now? Ashford's expression darkened slightly. Brigade staff position, lateral move technically, but everyone knows why. You don't move a battalion commander after one rotation unless there are concerns. Concerns about what? About her judgment in trying to sabotage a subordinate instead of developing her. Ashford leaned back. The brigade commander read all the evaluations, saw the pattern. Halford was trying to build a case against you while you were excelling. That doesn't reflect well on her leadership. Catherine felt no satisfaction, just exhaustion. She thought I was a threat to everything she'd built. She was wrong. You're not a threat to women in the military. You're proof that we belong here. Ashford stood. Now go celebrate with your soldiers. You've earned it. Catherine paused. Sir, one question. Those anonymous messages I received before JRTC, the ones about legacy hires failing, the photo of my father, do you know who sent them? Ashford's face was carefully neutral. I have my suspicions. Halford, I can't prove it, but the timing was convenient. Push you off balance before the evaluation. Make you doubt yourself. He met her eyes. Did it work? Catherine thought about it. The messages had haunted her, but they'd also hardened her resolve. No, sir, they made me more determined. Then whoever sent them miscalculated badly. Ashford almost smiled. Sometimes the best way to forge steel is to put it in the fire. 3 days later, back at Fort Campbell, Catherine was called to Captain Ashford's office. Come in, close the door. She did, sat down. Ashford had papers on his desk, official documents. I've got news, 2 pieces, both good. Sir, first, your early promotion to captain has been approved. Your date of rank moves up 6 months. Congratulations. Catherine felt the weight of it. Captain, the rank her father had worn when she was born. Second piece of news, I'm moving to battalion staff as the S3 operations officer next month. You're taking over as Alpha Company executive officer immediately. In 6 months, you'll take command of the company when the current XO moves to a new assignment. Catherine's eyes widened. Sir, company command already. You're ready. You proved it at JRTC. You proved it to Halford, even though she didn't want to see it. He paused. And you proved it to yourself. That's what matters most. That evening, Catherine sat alone in her quarters, the Army Commendation Medal certificate on her desk, next to her Ranger tab, next to her Bronze Star, next to the photo of her father. Her phone buzzed. Text from Brennan. First round on me at the company bar tonight. You coming, ma'am? Catherine smiled. Typed back. On my way. She grabbed her jacket, but before leaving, she picked up her father's photo, the one from his final mission, running toward wounded soldiers under fire. She spoke to the photo, to the ghost she'd been chasing for 20 years. I figured it out, Dad. It took me long enough, but I got there. The shadow you left wasn't a burden. It was a foundation. You built something worth building on. Values worth carrying forward. I'm not you. I'll never be you. But I'm someone you'd respect. Someone who learned that leadership isn't about being fearless. It's about pushing through the fear. It's about knowing when to lead from the front and when to trust others to lead while you command. I spent 20 years running from your shadow, but I'm done running. I'm stepping into it, not to replace you, but to honor what you built by building something myself. She set the photo down, wiped her eyes, then walked out into the spring night. At the company bar, her platoon was waiting. All 36 soldiers. Brennan had bought the first round. Blake had organized a celebration. Even First Sergeant Sutherland was there nursing a beer and wearing something close to a smile. They toasted her, she toasted them back. They told stories from JRTC, laughed about the hard parts now that they were over, planned for the future. Blake approached with 2 beers, handed one to Catherine. Ma'am, I've been thinking about Ranger School, about what you said that it was the hardest thing you ever did, but you finished anyway. Catherine took the beer, and I'm putting in my packet. First Sergeant Sutherland is writing my recommendation. You already wrote yours, he told me. Blake smiled. Thank you for that, for showing me it's possible. You'll do great, Blake. Just remember the tab doesn't mean you're fearless. It means you push through the fear. Yes, ma'am. Blake raised her beer. To pushing through. Catherine clinked glasses. To pushing through. Catherine stood there surrounded by soldiers who'd started as skeptics and ended as believers. Soldiers who'd tested her and found her worthy. Soldiers who'd follow her anywhere because she'd proven she'd never send them where she wouldn't go. For the first time in 20 years, she wasn't carrying her father's shadow. She was wearing it like armor. Armor she'd earned, an armor that fit. The bar was loud, full of soldiers celebrating, full of life. Catherine raised her beer and looked around at faces she'd come to know, to trust, to lead. This was where she belonged, not because of her father's name, but because she'd earned it. Mission first. People always, just like he taught her, just like she'd carry forward.